This is Punk Rock and Politics, and today is July 4th, 2017, and this is episode number 29. Let's do this.
These days are strange, it's true.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
If you think that punk rock doesn't mix with politics, you're wrong.
Welcome to Punk Rock and Politics. Today we'll be talking to Rio Goldhammer from the UK-based band 1919 about his documentary titled Punk Rock and Politics, which highlights his brief political campaign to run for office. And then we'll talk about the similarities of Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn. Then on Open Mic's Last Call, we'll talk about Trump's tweets and the left's fantasy of impeaching him over his idiotic tweets. I mean, is that even possible? So let's get to the political mosh pit, but first, here's the news of the week.
Here's what's making news.
The fake media.
And if ever there was an object lesson about what austerity really means and what poverty really means in Britain, look at the disaster of Grenfell Tower. Not one of those people need or should have died.
That was Jeremy Corbyn speaking to thousands at an anti-austerity march in London, England. And President Man-Baby Trump addressed veterans for a 4th of July speech and attacked the media.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them. Because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not. We won and they lost. The fact is the press has destroyed themselves because they went too far. The dishonest media will never keep us from accomplishing our objectives on behalf of our great American people. Will never happen.
Later on the week, he continued his attacks on the media via Twitter, and more on this story at the end of the program. In healthcare news, the Senate Republicans still haven't been able to repeal and replace the ACA or Obamacare, even though they've been saying they were going to do it first thing for 8 years now. However, they are still certain they will be able to pass the healthcare bill without any Democratic senator support, even though moderate Senator Joe Manchin is willing to make a deal.
I have not spoken to Mitch McConnell, and I've heard him say the Democrats don't want to work with him. That's not factual and it's not accurate. I'm one that wants to work with my friends. I've been reaching out, and Shelley and I have been speaking, Susan Collins and I have been speaking, Dean Heller and I have been speaking. We want to fix this thing, but and Chuck Schumer wants to fix this thing.
From the orders of the North Korea country's leader, Kim Jong-un, they launched their 11th missile this year and was considered its best test flight ever. The missile flew for 37 minutes and traveled over 530 miles before falling into the Sea of Japan. It looks like tensions are rising off of the Korean peninsula. We'll have more as this story develops. On this day in rock history, July 4th, 1976, at the Black Swan in England, was the debut show for The Clash, and the Sex Pistols was also on the bill. I mean, what a great show. And that's the news of the week. When I first created the Punk Rock and Politics podcast a little over 7 months ago, I wanted to interview bands, musicians, and share their music, experience, and their views on politics. And that's the main reason why I'm so excited for today's feature artist, Rio Goldhammer. Rio is the singer and frontman for the UK-based punk band called 1919. And if that already wasn't cool enough, Rio recently ran for political office in his conservative hometown in the United Kingdom. I mean, how rad is that? And to top it off, he recorded and produced a documentary about his experience, which is titled Punk Rock and Politics. I mean, what a great title, right? Even though Rio is playing music and running for office over the Atlantic, we were able to talk and relate on so many issues. It really makes you think how small the world really is. And we are lucky enough to be able to talk to Rio about his documentary, band, and of course, politics. But before we get to the interview, let's check out one of his songs. Here's Revenge by 1919. And that was Revenge by 1919. And I have the lead singer from that band, Rio Goldhammer. And he's coming on here, the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, all the way over from London, or England, Leeds, right?
It's not London, no. About 200 miles north of there. That's right. Like a whole country away.
So, thanks for joining us on the podcast, man.
Hey, no problem. It's great to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, sorry. We've had some more technical difficulties in the beginning, but we got it worked out, and you're on here, and you actually have a documentary called Punk Rock and Politics, and that's how I found you online, and I'm so happy that you're able to come on here and talk about it. So what was the documentary really about?
The documentary was just I decided to record my small election campaign in a kind of really conservative town in the north of England, which is actually where I grew up as well. I'm calling now. I'm talking from Leeds, which is where I live. But that's like the kind of the city, and then if you travel about 12 miles north, you get to this town, which is fairly small in comparison. And then of that town, which is quite conservative dominated anyway, I stood in a particularly conservative kind of district.
Right. And the Tories have always won, and you were running as a Labour Party.
Yeah. So I actually came last of 4.
Yeah, I think it was what, UKIP? Didn't they have? They had more votes too, and I was like, oh my god.
They actually came second. Yeah. Like, so it was Tory first, UKIP second, Liberal third, and then me last.
Mm-hmm.
But
was that right before? Was that right before Brexit?
I think it was in May, so it was just before.
Okay.
Just before. It
So
was pretty much exactly the same time.
Right. So that's kind of probably why UKIP was doing better. Because I've kind of been watching, the election cycle and the campaigns. Because it's really fascinating to me. That's why your documentary was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, some cool music and like a documentary about you running. And how long is the election cycle? Because it didn't seem very long. Like, or the campaign cycle, the campaign cycle, like, because over here in the States, our campaign cycle, they run for office for about 2 years, about a year to 2 years. They run for office, but in your documentary, it seemed like it was very short time.
Yeah, I mean, so my what I filmed was only in the sort of 3 days leading up to it.
Exactly, yeah.
But you've actually got like, there's probably only about a month or 2 months where you're even allowed to really run as a candidate.
Exactly.
You have the cut-off point, and then you're not allowed to put out any material of the individual and the party before this certain date, right? And then you get like 2 months to do it, and then there's the election, and then it's
Wow. See, and that's totally opposite here, because some people, they'll start campaigning, like I said, a year, 2 years, and then Theresa May, when she called for the snap election. It only happened, 2 months, not even, after she called for it.
Yeah, like 6 weeks or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we've had kind of, traditionally in the UK, the government basically has the opportunity to call an election whenever they want. So in the past, there's a lot of politicking. They'll do it when they're really high in the polls and when they think they might increase the majority. And it's like a maximum of 5 years they can be in for. But in 2010, in the coalition, so it was like a liberal conservative, really it was the dumbest thing ever. And the Liberals just completely gutted their entire base by getting into bed with
because that's
all that stuff.
That's like Tony Blair. Because I actually did a recent little segment.
Not Blair.
Oh no! But before, because I thought Tony Blair, I thought he was a conservative for the longest time. I'm not even joking. Yeah, over here, because he was, like you said, in bed. He was like in bed with George Bush, going to war with Iraq in 2003.
Yeah. I mean, he's more like a Hillary Clinton.
Exactly.
Right? So he's big establishment, led the supposedly left party. Did do some, socially progressive things whilst in office, but was also really hawkish on foreign policy and really pro-market and pro. His government actually introduced university tuition fees as well.
Wow!
Which they were free before we had a Labour government.
And they've gone up, I would imagine, right? Since they implemented the fees.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Yeah, once you implement fees, they go up.
Yes.
Yeah. So
exactly, and especially when it's like the left. If it's the left that's brought it in, then the right basically can and they trebled it.
Is that when the left kind of started to get in bed? The left in your part of the world, the Labour Party, is that when they started to get in bed with the Conservatives, or was it before then?
No. So the Labour Party would never get in bed with the Conservative Party. They're like the Democrats and Republicans, but we have this. We have like a central party, the Liberal Party.
Okay, yeah. So that, I guess, that's what I kind of meant. The left moves centrist, so it allows the right party to move to the extreme right.
This was the crazy thing about 2010, right? Mm-hmm. It was Gordon Brown, right? So it was the same government.
Yes.
Blair was the leader of, right?
Yeah,
and they were quite centrist at the time. And the Liberal Party started running to the left of Labour.
Okay.
So it was the Liberal Party, the centrist party at the time, who were campaigning on abolishing tuition fees and stuff like that. And then they were the ones that got into bed with the Conservatives and trebled the fees, So they completely screwed themselves, and they're still really struggling. They're all but dead, really, in a lot of ways.
Wow. Oh, yeah. So, and then that's kind of leads up to this current election right now with Jeremy Corbyn and everything. But we'll hop into that after. Let's play one more song by you. Yeah, and then this song it's a great song for the documentary. It's kind of like the background main theme song. So is there anything we want to say about this song or your band before we go into it?
Yeah, so this is it's the kind of de facto Labour anthem. It's an old socialist kind of song that they used to sing at Labour Party conferences and stuff like that, and do from time to time still. And I actually played this on acoustic a week ago in London to a film screening of a new documentary about Dennis Skinner by a guy called Daniel Draper. And it was really, really good. Dennis Skinner is the coolest, most old school, bolshy, socialist, 85-year-old ex-miner Labour MP. And he heckles the Queen, the opening of Parliament every time and stuff. He's absolutely brilliant. So it was a great film. And it was just, I was very proud to be able to do it in front of this audience watching that film.
Oh, wow. Nice. So yeah, you actually got to debut this at the panel that you were just recently doing for your film.
Yeah,
nice.
Exactly. So I played this song before the film on acoustic, and then afterwards I was honoured to sit on the panel with the director and some of the organisers from the film festival. So that was really cool.
Right.
That was at East End Film Festival in London, which I think is still going on.
Yeah, awesome. And so let's check out the song. So this is The Red Flag from the documentary Punk Rock and Politics by Rio Goldhammer and the Fucks.
The people's flag is deepest red. It's shrouded of armada dead, and in the limbs grows stiff and cold. Their hearts blood dry, it's every fold. Then raise the scarlet standard high. Within its shade, they'll live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. Look round the French, my love says blaze. Destiny jam, my chances praise. In Moscow falls, he seems a song. Chicago swells, the searching for. They'll raise the scarlet standard high. Within its shade, we'll live and die. The keep the red flag flying here. This is today, the weekend base. Whose minds are fixed on Belfast Place. To cringe before the rich man's frown and hold a say, grit and blood down. They'll raise the skull and stand it high. Within its shade, we'll live and die. The cowards flinch and traitors stare. We'll keep the red flag flying here. With heads uncovered, swear we all to bear it onward till we fall. Come dungeons dark or gallows grim, this song shall be our pioneer. They'll raise the skull and stand it high. Within its shade, we'll live and die. The cowards flinch and traitors stare. We'll keep the red flag flying here. We'll keep the red flag flying here. We'll keep the red flag flying here.
And that was The Red Flag by Rio Goldhammer and the Fucks. So I still have Rio here all the way from England across the pond, as they say. What's up, Rio? Thanks for sticking around.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, I
it's
know.
been fun.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's getting late. So, like we were talking before, we're going to bring it back around to the recent election with Jeremy Corbyn. So, how do you feel about, especially after your documentary, when you had like such a bad loss, and then now you had Corbyn and such a huge win by Labour? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you take, victory comes in many forms. There's still a Conservative government here.
Yes.
But we took away the majority, so they're kind of impotent, and that's hilarious and brilliant. And it really gives us momentum for hopefully for a real Labour win next time.
Right. Okay, so I was talking to someone who's actually from England, and I asked them, so who or what is the DUP? And they had no idea, other than they're from like Northern Ireland. So do you know more about the DUP? Was it Democratic Unionist Party?
Yeah, Democratic Unionist Party.
Yeah.
They're just Northern Irish Conservatives. It's strange. I mean, obviously the United Kingdom is a sovereign single kind of country, but within that we have 5 different countries as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. 4 different countries, each with their own kind of assemblies, their own kind of governments that aren't fully independent of each other, but do have controls on various things. So in Northern Ireland, there's still a lot of chaos about, women's rights are still really, like reproductive rights, things like that. Abortion's still illegal there.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And they pass. What used to happen was if a woman in Northern Ireland wanted an abortion, she'd be able to travel to England, to Liverpool, and have the abortion in England, which is crazy in itself. But the DUP have been trying to push forward for like Northern Irish women not to be able to get this paid for on the English health service and stuff like that. So they're really socially conservative. They're really homophobic. They're regressive on just
exactly.
about. But the interesting thing is they're not as fiscally conservative as the English Conservatives. They're against a lot of the cuts that have been coming in. One of the they're not for a hard Brexit because that could jeopardise the Irish peace process.
Yes, that's a big deal.
Good Friday Agreement.
That's a big deal too, because with Brexit, the border there, which is like really, really complex subject, because there's been, the Civil War and everything for how long has that been went on before the peace treaty and everything? Do you know?
Oh God, like forever, I think.
Yeah, I know, right? Forever. So I couldn't imagine them trying to mess with that border, and then it spirals out of control into some sort of civil war again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this idea of it would be creating a border, rather than, because at the moment there's no border, obviously.
Yeah, so you would have to
Ireland
create a
and-
border because that would be the EU sanctions would mandate that.
Well, yeah, not so much the sanctions, but just because you'd be going from the EU to not the EU, and it'd be trying to.
So then you'd be out of the
Uh,
anywhere
shit,
in the
what's
EU
the-
there's no border. Okay. Oh no, it'd essentially be if like Texas annexed itself, then going in and out of Texas you'd have to go through a border, like for here in America.
Yeah, exactly. But apart from if like Texas had sort of become independent, but also stop them going to war with they'd organised a free movement between neighbouring states, but then suddenly, exiting the EU, and suddenly you'd have that agreement. Otherwise, you would have a border and then independent. And completely free from kind of British colonial rule, and that's why the thing that brought about peace or a peace process was the idea that people in the north were entitled to both Republican Irish citizenship and UK citizenship, and that they can move freely between the two as if it were one single island. So it's about breaking down barriers between the north and south of Ireland. Otherwise, people in the north that believe they are Irish and there is only one island, then that'll be really, really dangerous for peace. And of course there's actually another layer of insanity to the whole thing, which is that in Northern Ireland their assembly, their kind of parliament, has a power sharing agreement between Unionists and Republicans, right? And so if one of them has like the first minister, then the second in command basically has to be from the opposing party, and they have to share power that way. When they don't have an agreement, power goes back to, by default, to Westminster in London, which is supposed to be neutral. Now, at the moment, there is no agreement. There's no power-sharing agreement in Ireland to London, and now and Westminster can't be neutral in the matter because the DUP are part of the ruling. So that in itself, arguably, probably undermines the Good Friday Agreement, the peace treaty, anyway. So that's on top of the whole soft border, hard border thing.
Oh wow! So that's what they mean when they say hard Brexit or soft Brexit, is with like all that in the borders. That's wow, that's complicated.
Really complicated. Yeah, I mean, and it took decades and decades to bring peace about, and now if they're not careful, it will just completely unravel.
Exactly. So, and then speaking of like Brexit, they need to get that done in what, like 2 weeks or a month, or when is the deadline?
Oh, no, it's 2 years. The official process takes 2 years.
Okay. And were they trying to push it back?
Well, if you think there's 40 years worth of legislation to go through.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But 2 years is.
Well, I mean, geez, I was hearing on the news that they needed to get the process done in a few weeks, and they were trying to get it pushed back. Theresa May was trying to get it pushed back, but the EU, they were saying no, they're not changing any of the dates. So, I mean, 2 years.
I think that was just the timescale to begin official negotiations.
I see, to begin the negotiation, and then that would activate the 2-year mechanism or whatever.
Well, so I mean, that's already been activated. That was the triggering of Article 50, which happened
when Theresa May triggered it. I see. So that's when the 2-year countdown started, essentially.
Yeah, and then it can only be extended if you have like a unanimous agreement from all the EU member states that we should be allowed more.
That's not going to happen, man.
Well, I don't know, 27 states. They could just agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who knows? So, I mean, that's super complicated and very meticulous. But then you have over here in the States, you just have kind of a reality TV show, more or less. So, what you said you've been watching it. So, what do you get, and what's your impression of what's going on over here in the States?
Well, I mean, the difference is, I think. I think I saw a meme just after Brexit, or just after Trump got elected, right? And I stayed up pretty much all night to watch it. And I saw a meme that said, it was Britain saying, well, that Brexit vote was probably the stupidest thing anyone's ever done. And America just says, hold my drink.
Yeah.
And so Trump gets. So I think, in a lot of ways it's similar, because actually what you have is this grandstanding, insane kind of right-wing authoritarian leader, but who is actually so corrupt and incompetent that fortunately, they can't do much. It's not as bad as it could be if they were really serious.
Yeah. And
I think that's a saving grace.
One thing that I don't know if you noticed or picked up, it's kind of like inside baseball out here or in here. You were saying with the conservative government, you kind of diluted their power with the liberals with this recent election with Corbyn. But here it's almost like the Republicans, they had a huge win, but it's the Republicans and the Tea Party, the extreme right, they're the ones that keep hurting and tripping up Trump, which is kind of hilarious. It's his own party, the extreme faction of his own party, that's really hurting them getting anything accomplished.
Oh, yeah. And it's the same with, the Conservative Party in the UK has been divided on over Europe forever,
exactly.
With half of them hating it and wanting hard Brexit as quick as possible. The other half are neoliberals and they just want trade and they think that's more important and they just want, free movement of goods and services and capital. So that's why they're pro-Europe, but they're really bitter. And the thing is, Theresa May, even with the DUP support, has a majority of about 3.
Wow, yeah,
which means that unless all of her MPs toe the party line, then they won't be able to push anything through, and that is so unlikely.
And that's
because there will always be people.
And exactly the exact same things happening here with Trump. The Senate, they just recently released their healthcare bill where they want to strip away a bunch of programs and dismantle our Obamacare, which is like nothing compared to your NHS. So there's, I think, 3 senators over here who are like, Republican senators are like, we won't support it. And so if 2 senators don't go with it, and there's only, 100 senators, if 2 senators don't go with it, he 2 Republican ones, he can't get anything accomplished. So it's his own party that's not letting him get anything accomplished. And also with Brexit and then with Bernie Sanders, people that I talk to here in the States who don't really know anything that's going on in UK or anywhere else, I always liken Bernie Sanders to Jeremy Corbyn. Do you know anything about Bernie Sanders?
Oh yeah, look, I love him.
Yeah,
love him.
Yeah.
There's so many similarities, and even down to the fact that, if you'd put Bernie Sanders in a race with Trump for the presidency, all the polls said that Sanders would have wiped the floor with him.
Exactly.
And you'd be in so much of a better situation now. The problem was it was his own party. It was the Democratic Party, wasn't it, that basically undermined him and put too many bricks up so they could get their person, they could get their candidate in, which was Clinton. And actually, the Labour Party, my party, I'm a paid-up member, proudly so, but, a lot of the people in the party to begin with tried to do the same thing. That's why they called for a second leadership election. That's why we had to go out and win again.
Yeah, I found an entire 2-minute sound clip of all Labour MPs talking like trash about Corbyn and how he'll never win and how he's no vision of the future and blah blah blah. That's not a Labour Party they want to be a part of. It wasn't that hard to find that clip either. But
no.
Exact same thing.
The positive thing is that everyone's sort of, all the people that didn't want Corbyn as leader in the party, it was just because they didn't believe he could win over enough support in the wider public to win an election. And if you don't win an election, ultimately you can't change people's lives for the better at all.
Yeah.
But now everyone's kind of eating humble pie, and publicly so. They're coming out and saying, I was wrong. Great.
Well, that's okay.
And that's cool.
Yeah, we have so many similarities between politics, but that is not one similarity, because we have the Hillary Clinton and the neoliberals who are just, creating this Russian thing. Let's kind of dive into that. What do you think about the Russian conspiracy that hacked the election, more or less? Because that's kind of what the Hillary Clintonites and the liberals, they don't want to, as you say, eat humble pie.
No, and actually I've noticed that, they are still hell-bent on this idea that actually only a technocrat, centrist, corporate Democrat can win.
Yes.
Even though that keeps being shown time and time again not to be the case, even as recently as the Georgia Senate race.
Yeah. The one that just happened. That was like a deep red. That would be kind of like the race you ran in your documentary. It would be kind of what it's like, you weren't going to win, but you did it because you wanted to do it and kind of throw some ideas out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, Labour stands in every seat in the country and contests everything, even if it's a really stab in the dark, but
right.
And that's great.
Which see here, Obama tried that, called the 50-state strategy, or Howard Dean, and then Obama tried it, but they kind of gave up on that and just said, we're going to only focus on a few key strategic areas, and that's really what destroyed them, because they took certain areas for granted. And the thing, like you said, how they're hell-bent on staying this liberalist, neoliberal, globalist party. But I think that neoliberalism, globalism, race to the bottom is what created Trump and UKIP and Brexit. That's what created these things. But people don't want to call out. They want more of this neoliberalism to try to fix this problem that neoliberalism created. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's that whole thing about you can't just keep dumping toxic waste in the river for 20 years and then be surprised when a giant toxic monster comes out of it. Right? And Trump and Brexit are those monsters, giant radioactive sewage monsters that we've made ourselves.
Right. He said he was going to drain the swamp, but he is the swamp monster.
He's like the swampiest swamp person you could ever think. But he just puts his family in the cabinet. It's such the chutzpah of the man, And oh god, I love. I talk with anyone, no matter what their political views are. But Trump supporters are very I'll bash anyone, even if I support them, if they do something wrong. Even Bernie Sanders is a little bit too war hawkishy for me. But Trump supporters, Trump is God. He can do no wrong. And they really never admit that he's wrong. And there's one thing he was saying, how he's accomplished more than any other president in this amount of time. And all these people were saying that he was, but they're asking them, what has he done? And they can't list a single thing. Oh, we had the same debate about, post-Brexit. People were saying, I'm glad, we're going to get back control, was this big maxim of the whole campaign. And this radio show called LBC that's pretty good. And they have quite an array of people in there. But, one of the journalists was saying to a caller that called in, was saying, so which EU law are you most looking forward to changing? And they were like, well, all of them. Okay, yeah, but specifically which one? Well, no, I don't.
There's probably thousands on the books. It would be easy to name one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they couldn't. And then eventually they just start going on about immigration, which is the default.
Yes, that's kind of the scapegoat. And then okay, let's keep going on this neoliberalism swamp monster that's created. And then we have the poor immigrants who, they're basically just reacting and being moved around by our wars that we're creating, and then they use them as the scapegoats.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the one of the things about, say, a project like the EU, people like David Cameron tried to take credit for every small thing that was done that came from the EU and never spoke about the positives of it, and yet blamed it for every single thing. I think there was I can't remember what it was about. It was something to do with saving one of the steel industry, I think, and people were saying you need to, put more money into this steel industry in the UK because it's really struggling and blah blah blah. And David Cameron, who was the Prime Minister at the time, came out and said, "Oh, the EU regulations won't let me do it." And then you had Donald Tusk or someone at the EU standing up going, "Yeah, you can. That's just a lie."
Wow.
They just, and they blame. They can blame the EU for everything. Just go, well, my hands are tied because the EU. My hands are tied because the EU.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to a referendum, they're saying, "Oh, but we want to stay in the EU." And they were like, "Well, people just thought, well, you've been telling us for years that it's their fault. Everything's their fault." So, to try and turn that around now in a few months in a campaign and just go, "Oh, I didn't mean that."
Yeah, it's very disingenuous. That's awesome that they have people to call them on their shit, because here, all we have is the UN or something, but no one even the conservatives here won't even listen to the UN or take it seriously by any chance.
People, I mean, you can fact check Trump. That's always a good laugh.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, definitely. But that's the thing. I mean, it's like the truth is almost a perception or almost like an interpretation almost, because you could have one story and then the right and the left can both report on it in such different ways that the verbiage that their viewers are getting it, are almost the verbiage and the language that they're getting it and seeing it from are so different that when they go and talk in person, they can't even communicate because they're not even given the same story. It's spun so bad on the left and the right. So both people who are getting this spun out story, they can't communicate. I mean, do you see that? Does that even make sense?
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, there's a big generational divide as well, because, you know, it's the sort of older generation of people still read the newspapers, and the younger generation actually don't read them all. Actually, when I was campaigning to remain in the EU, I just, you know, spent a couple of days getting shouted at by old people, really. But, you know, when the occasional one that would stop and discuss things with me, they'd talk about people claiming benefits. And I said, look, did you know there's more British people claiming unemployment benefit in like every one of the EU countries apart from Poland that there is vice versa? And they said, well, I find that hard to believe. And I said, well, go home.
Look at that's the statistics.
No, they said, I don't have a computer. And I said, where do you get your information from? Oh, I said, do you read it in the Murdoch press? Yeah. And they just sort of laughed and said, oh, he probably owns all the papers, you know, and that was it.
Well,
and
you
kind of think,
yeah, and that's not healthy when one person owns or only 6 companies own 95% of all the media in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing that's changed that is social media, really, and the fact that. But then at the same time, that's where you get fake news spreading and stuff like that. And people will just share and agree with anything they just see written down just because it's written down. You know?
Or they'll just share it based on the headline and not actually read the article.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I actually tried. I started a petition to see if I could use people just reading the title of things to. I would basically, if you get 10,000 signatures on a petition in this country, then it has to get raised in Parliament eventually.
Right.
I started this petition saying, you know, we must leave Europe now. And then the petition itself said that, you know, we must turn Norfolk and Suffolk into a giant engine, which will create thousands and thousands of jobs, and then sail the 14,000 miles southwest until we get to Australia. And we'll just park the UK just above New Zealand, and join the Asian economy. And
did you get any signatures?
I got a handful, yeah, but it didn't go as viral. I just wanted to go on the news and say, you know, well, the thing about this country is if you get just over half the people to agree, it immediately has to become law.
Yeah. Well, I think if you just ask people man on the street, you know, over here, if you would ask conservatives, you know, should we leave North America? Or, you know, how you're asking, should we leave, Europe? They'd be like, oh yeah, we need to leave Brexit. We should leave Europe. You know, I don't think they wouldn't kind of back whenever we have wars here in the country, they're like, oh, this country, you know, attacked us, but we're going to go to war with this country all the way over here, a few thousand miles away. So people don't really know geography. Then they just kind of go with whatever the media tells them. So we've talked about kind of what created this neoliberal problem and this whole swamp monster creation. So in your opinion, as we wrap it up here, what do you think would be a reversal of that? I mean, we know Jeremy Corbyn, but what else do you think would reverse this whole neoliberalism, the Brexit, the creation of Trump?
I think you have to keep fighting, and you have to have people like Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn actually get into power, and then everyone will start to see how much better their lives are because of it. And from then you'll be able to look back and say, well, why did I believe all this stuff that was being told to me before? You know, because that's not the case, and things are fine, you know. And I think just to tie it back in with my film,
Yes,
the victory I was going for was never going to be in that seat. But what if, like, a scruffy kind of punk guy, if he can stand and try and get elected to a council seat in a conservative town, kind of anyone can do it. You know, democracy is ours. It's not about money and business and being squeaky clean and all that stuff. It's just about people. And you know, maybe, you know, I hope perhaps I could inspire somebody somewhere to go, actually, I'll put myself forward this time, you know?
Right. And yeah, definitely. I think putting yourself out there and then watching you actually run, and then you actually stood up on stage with the other candidates and everything, you know, one guy was in a suit, how you're saying, it was, you know, and it was cool to see, like we were talking about earlier, the generation gap, you know, it's a slow change, and it's about doing it and going up there, and like you said, them seeing a scruffy young punk dude standing next to the guy with a suit and be like, we're coming for you.
Yeah, and in that moment, we're completely equal and have every chance of winning as long as, you know, enough people vote for us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's what's so important about keeping democracy pure, is keeping us equal with them.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, I would agree with everything you've been saying. So, I really enjoyed your documentary. How can anyone find it online? And then also, how can anyone find your music from your band 1919 online?
Well, thanks for asking. So for 1919, you can go on our website, which is 1919official.co.uk, or I think 1919official.com forwards to it as well, and or facebook.com/1919official, or on Twitter at 1919official, all that stuff. And with the film, I've been really taken aback by the kind of positive response it's got, and you know, and it got a showing at the Workers Unite Film Festival in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Got a couple of screenings there, and it's been really cool. So actually, when I made the film, I had no thought about what I was going to actually do with it, and now I'm having to think about, you know, I'm going to get some screenings together or distribute it somehow. But you can stay in touch with, you know, any updates. You can go to punkrockpolitics.co.uk, and there'll be updates on there. I'd probably end up putting it on Amazon Prime or something like that. But
nice.
Yeah, I mean, these are cool things to consider that I'd never actually thought about before.
Yeah,
so it's a nice first kind of film.
Yeah, I really hope you do put it out there for other people to see, and then maybe inspire other people to make, even maybe there are other people like this running and they're not putting it down and making it into a documentary, and then after they see this, they'll be like, oh man, that guy did it, I'm gonna do it, and then we'll see more of these, and that's rad, because I totally dug it. It was very entertaining. The editing was good, and then you have your music. You created the music as the background, the soundtrack. You created that one song. So, dude, I definitely recommend it, highly recommend it. So all the links that Rio mentioned for his band 1919, and then also the links for the Punk Rock and Politics documentary, which is such an awesome name, you know? All of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why it's no surprise that we've agreed quite a lot, is because we're two people that have both come up with the title Punk Rock Politics or something. Right? So I think,
yeah. I mean, I got it from Fat Mike, really, from NoFX. That's kind of where I got it. But yeah, that's right. And then, and you know, I don't feel like it's my name, because other people have done a show moniker under this name, so I kind of feel I'm just holding the mantle of the Punk Rock Politics for a little bit until I could pass it on. So
bless you.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, thanks so much, Rio, for coming on. And like I said, all the links will be below to check out all of his stuff, and definitely when the documentary comes out, I would highly recommend everyone checking out and go in and say what up to Rio. So thanks so much for coming on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely. And here's one more as we head out. Here's Bloodline by 1919. All right, let's give it up for Rio Goldhammer and his band 1919 and the Fucks. I was telling him I love saying that so seriously. Rio Goldhammer and the Fucks. But yeah, definitely it was really cool having Rio on and talking to him about the podcast, or on the podcast, talking to him about his documentary. I totally stumbled across his documentary on YouTube because I put all the podcasts up on YouTube and everything. So if you're ever over there, and then I've been adding a few other like vlogs and stuff, but I kind of stumbled across it because I really enjoy YouTube, getting a lot of information on there, and I was like, whoa, this is so awesome. So I'm stoked that I was able to connect with him and get him on the podcast, and I think it turned out really good, and that was a fun conversation. And it kind of boggles my mind how much really the UK and the US have in common when it comes to politics and what's going on here and over there, because a lot of the things, the symptoms like Trump and Brexit and all this crazy shit that's going on, they're just kind of like symptoms of this neoliberalism, this world, conglomeration of corporations and government, and it's becoming world spread, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and then it's being fed by the military industrial complex, and more war and war, and it's all these problems are kind of going back to capitalism and being directed towards this one world government that they're kind of pushing, this neoliberal idea of a globalized economy. So it was awesome to talk to him on here and have him on, because, I kind of rant about that quite often here on the podcast. So it was really cool to have someone on and back me up, and someone who he knew way more about Brexit and all the intricacies of Brexit and everything, which is so cool because I love having people on here who are able to enlighten me and teach me something. So when I was going back and listening to the episode, editing it, there's Skype was kind of acting up, which sucks. I'm sorry, but what can you do? I guess the international calls, the Skypes aren't as the Skype bandwidth or whatever. It's not quite as good. But I kind of patched it up as good as I could. But I was listening back to it, and when I was editing it, I was like, man, I actually heard more things, and I learned more than I remember when I talked to him the first time. So Rio's awesome, man. That guy's really knowledgeable, and I definitely hope he's one of the type of musicians that I'm like, man, I really hope he ends up coming back on the politics and punk rock and politics podcast and talks again, because we definitely could have a whole nother episode talking about another issue. So all right, enough with that. That's pretty much all I got to do tonight for the Open Mic's Last Call. Welcome to the very end of the podcast. Here's Open Mic's Last Call, and we're going to talk really quick about Trump's tweets and the liberal media really just going all out and going crazy about Trump's tweets. And, he's been doing this ever since he's been running for office, even before. He tweets like a 16-year-old girl. But the thing that's really kind of crazy about this recent tweet, Dust Up, he tweeted Mika Brzezinski, she is on a morning show with Morning Joe Scarborough. He was a former congressman, and they're on it together. He's kind of right-leaning moderate. She's left-leaning moderate, and they kind of go, balance each other out. It's, it's an okay show, but they're kind of like a gossip morning show, like a political gossip morning show. So Trump goes and tweets how they want to go to Mar-a-Lago and whatever, and she was bleeding badly from a facelift, and everyone freaked out. And, what is Trump's fascination with bleeding women? Like when he went after Megyn Kelly, talking about how she was bleeding from wherever, what is his problem? But anyways, everyone's like, oh, it's not presidential and this is beneath him. It's like, dude, it's fucking Trump. When the fuck does anyone expected Trump to be presidential? He's not going to be presidential. And, as far as the Twitter and his tweets, like the left, again, they're making a huge deal out of this, and they want to say this is the way we can impeach him because these are official documents and we can impeach him over this. It's like, not really, because he has to be able to make those statements under oath, and then you can get him for perjury. That's how they got Bill Clinton. That's only the real way they're going to do it. You can't be impeached for acting like an idiot, or you can't be impeached for saying vile and morally wrong things. You can't do it. I mean, you could be a total asshole, a total jerk, and you can't get impeached for being a jerk. You have to get impeached for breaking the law. And, you know, my fellow friends and comrades on the left, they're just in this fantasy of everything's going to get Trump impeached. Everything's going to get him impeached. Everything he does. And it's not like that. And the whole thing, I think more would be to the left's benefit. What they have been doing is kind of throwing a stick in his progress, you know, trying to do this whole Russia thing, which is kind of scary because they're creating a war, but they are stopping his agenda. But then on the other hand, the Republicans and the far-right Republicans are stopping his agenda too. So to the Democrats, the only way you can stop Trump's his whole thing, what he wants to do, the only way you can stop Trump's agenda is by almost starting a war with Russia in order to stop Trump's agenda. I mean, it's kind of crazy that you could stop Trump's agenda by pushing real progressive values, just like what Jeremy Corbyn did over in the UK, like what I was talking to Rio about. Because Jeremy Corbyn stood up and actually pushed far left, real progressive values that the Labour hasn't been pushing for so long. And then he actually goes and wins in a huge victory that no one would have expected a month or two ago, even before Theresa May called the snap elections. So, you know what? It all comes down to the progressives, and the Democrats need to step up to the plate, and they actually need to start pushing progressive values, or else we're going to get stuck with 4 more fucking years of Trump tweeting about bloodied women and shit. Like, what the fuck is wrong with him, you know? And it's like his stupid tweets, everyone's acting like it's a big deal. He's been doing this since before the goddamn election, making people stupid names and everything. Why does anyone think, oh, he's elected, he's gonna become presidential now? No, that's not gonna happen. He's not gonna just become presidential. Jeez, this is just insane. So deal with, 3 more years of goddamn tweets. They're not gonna stop. And he is going after journalists, which is not right. But here's the thing. He's going after the bottom feeder journalists who people don't really respect. I mean, Mika Brzezinski, like I said, she's just kind of like a gossip talk show host for politics. But here's the thing. Once we start taking out journalists, and once we start censoring journalists, no matter what their political view is, then it's a slippery slope. Eventually it'll keep going and going in, and it'll start eliminating people. And I've been calling the left out on this for silencing people like Milo and silencing people like Ann Coulter. I don't agree with those fuckers, but you can't silence them, because then you'll start silencing more moderate people on the right. Same thing with Trump and going after the media with Mika Brzezinski and a lot of the, Acosta on CNN. I don't like Acosta, or I don't like Mika Brzezinski necessarily, but I don't think Trump should go after them and try to destroy them and get them, make them look bad, because either side, you don't want to take these people out and silence them, because once you start silencing anyone on any side from any political spectrum, then it slowly creeps in, and more people will get silenced. And once people start getting silenced, the creep will grow faster and faster, and that's what's really terrifying. So, liberal friends, I'm going to sign out, and no, Trump's tweets are not going to get him impeached. So thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics, and thanks again for Rio Goldhammer for coming on from the band 1919 and talking about his documentary. And we'll check you out next week. Peace out. Thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics. If you enjoyed the show and the information brought to you, please subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us here at Punk Rock and Politics, but more importantly, it helps the featured bands gain exposure. Also, if you know any bands or musicians who would like to join the political mosh pit and have their music featured on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, please email us at punkrockandpolitics@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And rock on, political junkies.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
Doing a better job of talking to each other. The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.